You're about to see something every camera reviewer conveniently skips. Two cameras that shouldn't even be in the same conversation, yet one brutal truth connects them that will change how you think about your next investment. The Hasselblad X2D II 100C costs nearly double what the Nikon Z8 does, but by the end of this, you'll understand why price tags mean absolutely nothing when the wrong camera kills your creative vision. This isn't about specs. This is about what happens when you're standing in front of a paying client and your camera betrays you. If you want more honest camera comparisons, rumors, and top 10 camera breakdowns that actually matter, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's talk about something most people discover too late. The Hasselblad X2D II gives you 100 megapixels of medium format glory, 16-bit color depth, and a sensor that's physically larger than anything Nikon offers. On paper, that sounds like the ultimate weapon. But here's what they don't tell you. That 100 megapixel sensor isn't just capturing more detail, it's capturing every single mistake you make. Every micro shake, every focus error, every lighting imperfection gets magnified across that massive 43.8 by 32.9 millimeter sensor. When you're shooting handheld portraits at a wedding, that medium format sensor becomes a liability, not an advantage. The Nikon Z8, with its 45.7 megapixel full-frame stacked sensor, gives you something completely different. It gives you forgiveness, it gives you speed, it gives you the ability to shoot 20 frames per second in RAW, while the Hasselblad is still writing files to its internal storage. But wait, because here's where it gets interesting. The Hasselblad's 5-axis 10-stop and body image stabilization should theoretically solve that shake problem, right? In perfect conditions, maybe. But take that camera into a dimly lit church ceremony or a street photography session at dusk, and you'll discover something frustrating. The stabilization works beautifully when you're methodical and slow. But the moment you need to react, the moment a genuine expression flashes across someone's face, that medium format system lags just enough to make you miss it. The Nikon Z8's stacked sensor architecture eliminates rolling shutter almost entirely and gives you autofocus speed that feels psychic. We're talking about deep learning subject detection that locks onto eyes, faces, and moving subjects with an aggression the Hasselblad simply cannot match. Now, let me reveal something about color science that will probably upset some Hasselblad loyalists. Yes, the X2D II produces colors that feel almost three-dimensional. That 16-bit color depth creates gradations so smooth they look like painted oil portraits. Skin tones have this creamy, ethereal quality that makes every image feel elevated. But here's the catch nobody mentions. That color signature only truly shines when you're shooting in perfect light with perfect exposure. Underexpose a Hasselblad file by even one stop, and when you try to recover it, you'll see noise patterns that feel unacceptable for an $8,000 camera. The Nikon Z8 doesn't have that magical medium format color depth, but its dynamic range behavior is far more practical. You can underexpose by 2 or 3 stops, push that RAW file hard in post, and still get clean, usable images. For wedding photographers shooting unpredictable ceremonies, or photojournalists working in crisis zones, that recovery latitude saves your reputation. Let's talk about autofocus, because this is where the truth gets uncomfortable. The Hasselblad X2D II has phase detection autofocus with 425 zones. That sounds impressive until you compare it to what Nikon has built. The Z8's autofocus doesn't just detect subjects, it predicts them. It learns. If you're shooting a fashion editorial and your model suddenly breaks into spontaneous movement, the Nikon tracks that motion with almost zero hunting. The Hasselblad, despite all its engineering prestige, hunts. It hesitates. It makes you wonder if you got the shot. For studio work where you control every variable, the Hasselblad is sublime. For anything involving unpredictability, chaos, or human spontaneity, the Nikon removes anxiety from your workflow. Here's something that might surprise you. The Hasselblad has 1 terabyte of built-in solid-state drive storage plus a CF Express Type B card slot. That internal storage sounds like luxury, but think about what happens when that drive fails. You're sending an $8,000 camera body back to Sweden for repairs, waiting weeks, losing income. The Nikon Z8 uses dual card slots with no internal storage dependency. It's simpler, more redundant, and more repairable. Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the smartest one. Now we need to discuss ergonomics, because gear reviews love to skip this. The Hasselblad X2D II is an SLR-style mirrorless medium-format camera. It's gorgeous. It feels like a piece of jewelry, but it's also heavy and deliberate. After shooting an 8-hour wedding day with that body, your shoulder will remind you that medium format was designed for tripods and studio stands, not handheld marathon shooting. The Nikon Z8 is approximately 30% smaller than the Nikon Z9 and balances beautifully with both lightweight primes and heavy telephoto lenses. It disappears in your hands. You forget you're holding it. For commercial work where you're moving between setups quickly, that agility is worth more than megapixels. Let's address low light, because this is where myths die. The Hasselblad's larger sensor should theoretically gather more light and produce cleaner high ISO files, right? In reality, the difference is marginal compared to the Nikon's stacked sensor technology. Shoot both cameras at ISO 6400. And yes, the Hasselblad edges ahead in absolute noise performance. But the Nikon's files are cleaner than you'd expect from a smaller sensor. And more importantly, the Nikon's autofocus still works flawlessly in near darkness, while the Hasselblad starts to struggle. If you're a concert photographer or a documentary shooter working in available light, the Nikon keeps delivering sharp images long after the Hasselblad gives up. Here's the truth no one shows. Lens ecosystems determine your creative ceiling, not camera bodies. Hasselblad's XCD lens lineup is exquisite. Every lens is sharp, every lens has character. But the selection is limited, expensive, and heavily weighted towards slower apertures. Want a fast portrait lens for subject isolation? You'll pay dearly. The Nikon Z mount ecosystem is exploding. You have access to native Z mount glass, adapted F mount lenses, and third-party options from Sigma, Tamron, and others. You have affordable options and exotic options. You have flexibility the Hasselblad ecosystem simply cannot offer. If you're building a career, lens ecosystem matters more than sensor size. Now let's talk video, because even if you're primarily a still shooter, video capability protects your income streams. The Nikon Z8 records internal 8K at 60 frames per second and 4K at 120 frames per second. It offers 12-bit NRAW and ProRes RAW HQ. It's a hybrid monster that makes you competitive in both photography and videography markets. The Hasselblad X2D II shoots video, but it's clearly an afterthought. If a client asks for motion content alongside stills, the Nikon makes you look like a hero. The Hasselblad makes you look limited. Here's what it comes down to. The Hasselblad X2D II 100C is a masterpiece for photographers who have total control over their environments. If you're shooting high-end fashion in a studio with strobes and assistants, if you're creating gallery prints that demand maximum resolution, if you're working slowly and intentionally, the Hasselblad rewards that discipline with images that feel untouchable. But if you're a working professional who shoots weddings, events, editorial work, commercial assignments with tight deadlines and unpredictable conditions, the Nikon Z8 is the more honest tool. It doesn't seduce you with medium format mystique. It just works relentlessly. The truth no one shows is this. The Hasselblad makes you feel like an artist. The Nikon makes you feel like a professional. And in the real world, professionals pay their bills more consistently than artists do. You're not choosing between good and bad. You're choosing between two philosophies. One asks you to slow down and perfect your craft. The other asks you to speed up and capture life as it unfolds. Only you know which pressure you're built to handle. If you're still hungry for camera truth that cuts through the marketing noise, you need to see what happens when Fujifilm's X-T30 Mark III goes head-to-head with its predecessor in ways that expose what camera companies hope you'll ignore. That comparison reveals something just as shocking about how we've been sold upgrades that don't actually upgrade anything meaningful. Go watch that next.